Hello, my name's Frank Pochek with Alleima. I'm in sales and new business development at Alleima, and today I'm joined by Larrin Thomas of Knife Steel Nerds. Hi, Larrin.
Hi, Frank.
Uh, First of all, with Alleima, if you're not familiar with the name and our brand, I just want to share briefly that we didn't randomly pick Alleima as our name. It's actually derived from two words, one being alloy, and then the second word is materials, because we have expertise in advanced material technology. That's how we came up with our name. We share a rich history with Sandvik in Sandvik in Sweden. We made our first melt of steel, stainless steel, in 1912, over 100 years ago. So if you're not familiar with us, the name Sandvik should resonate with you. Um, I want to talk about Larrin. I want to talk about some characteristics, performance characteristics of selecting a grade of steel. There's four of them, which is edge retention, hardness, corrosion resistance, and toughness. Would you talk on that just a little bit, if you don't mind, and explain to our listeners?
Yeah, so hardness is like a measure of strength. And in a knife, we're talking about resistance to deformation. So, like the edge rolling or mushrooming, anytime that happens, you have lost your edge. And so if you have higher hardness, you have better resistance to that deformation. So that's especially important, when chopping or stuff like that. But even if you're cutting tough materials or strong materials, your edge can be deflecting when you're trying to cut them. Corrosion resistance is relatively self-explanatory. We want to avoid rusting. That is an eyesore, but that's also affecting the steel itself. If you get pinholes, pitting, that kind of thing, that is bad for the steel. And also, if you're getting corrosion on your edge, you can also lose your sharp edge through corrosion. So toughness and wear resistance counterbalance each other in a lot of ways. So if you increase your wear resistance, you're losing toughness and vice versa. And so I will talk about these competing goals a lot. And when I talk about my favorite steels, I'll give them in rough categories. So a lot of times people will be debating different steels and they're talking about steels that are within the same category, quite similar to each other. And maybe one has an edge, pun intended, in one direction or another, but you're really debating something that is not that different than something else. So I have my favorite steels in different categories. So like a high toughness steel with relatively low wear resistance. But of course, it's my favorite, so it has some wear resistance. On the other end of the spectrum, a high wear resistant steel, which would be something that should be able to cut for a long time, especially when you're slicing abrasive materials. And then balanced steels in the middle that have a combination of the two. So Alleima has steels that are on my favorite list. So particularly 14C28N, which is
Yeah,
a
talk about that if you don't mind. Alema makes 10 different stainless steel grades, and as you mentioned, a balance between the four. Uh, our 14C28N is falls right in really in the middle of all those characteristics of performance that you mentioned. Um, Go ahead and talk about our 14C28N and what you think of it.
yeah. So I remember it coming out, around 2009-ish,
That's
2010,
correct.
somewhere
Yep,
in there.
2009.
And so it was a kind of a redevelopment of 13C26. And so Kershaw Knives was having, well, they didn't think that 13C26 had enough corrosion resistance for their knives. They were getting complaints by customers who maybe didn't take the best care of their knives. And they wanted to maintain the performance characteristics of 13C26, but increase the corrosion resistance. Well, that is not an easy thing. You're trying to increase one property while not losing the others. And metallurgically, that is often difficult, if not impossible. Usually you have to give up something to gain something, right? And so 14C28N was a great development because it really maintains all of the characteristics of 13C26, but increase the corrosion resistance. So the hardness is almost the same as 13C26, might be slightly less, but with some adjustment to heat treatment, they're very similar. The wear resistance, when I measured that in the Catra edge retention tester, the 14C28N actually did better than 13C26. I don't know if that's just a statistical anomaly or something about the balance of elements is actually improving it, but it did impressively well in edge retention. And then the toughness was essentially identical to 13C26 and also the competitor grade AEBL. So the 14C28N tested great. And when I did the corrosion test, it confirmed what Sandvik at the time was saying, now Alleima, that it had enhanced corrosion resistance. When I did a salt spray test, it did better. So why is it my high toughness recommendation? Well, when I tested it against other stainless steels in a subsize unnotched toughness test that I typically do, it is near the top of the chart, along with, like I said, very good edge retention for that high toughness. For the level of toughness, it's very good edge retention. And the corrosion resistance is good, and it reaches high hardness. So it really just ticks a lot of boxes.
Great. I appreciate you sharing that about our 14C28N. So I appreciate that. Just to wrap up, I would like to whet the appetite of our viewers on a new grade that we launched in 2023 called Damax. It is stainless Damascus steel with two of our premier grades, 19C27, which is a 440C equivalent, and then our 7C27MO2, which is a modified 420 with a little bit of moly in it. It's 135 layers, as I mentioned, and I know that you have a sample of that, and we hope to have you back one day after you've had a chance to analyze and play around with that a little bit. But at first glance, knowing those two grades that we paired together, what's your initial thoughts on Damax?
Well, I actually have tested Damascus with those same two grades. So my father made some Damascus in 19C27 and a similar grade called 716. And so I did a big Damascus study a year or two back now, and it did very well, that combination. Now, I can't say for sure that Damax will perform exactly the same, but likely about the same. And so I like that combination, and my dad liked it as well. It etched pretty well with good contrast, and it compared favorably with some more expensive powder metallurgy based Damascus in terms of edge retention and toughness. So you compared 19C27 to 440C, but 19C27 has significantly better toughness than 440C at the cost of some wear resistance, but in my opinion is probably more balanced in terms of toughness wear resistance. So we were pleasantly surprised with the performance of that combination. And so, yeah, I think Damax would definitely be worth trying. So it's a good combination of steels.
Well, we appreciate those comments, and we hope to have you back again for another interview when you have a chance to formally test and analyze our Damax. And again, Larrin, thanks for being with us today. We appreciate your positive comments about our 14C28N, and hope to have you back soon.
Yeah, anytime, Frank.
All right, thanks.